Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sufism is meant to be a state of being. It's not meant to be a philosophy. It's not a course in college where you listen to what the professor says or you read what the book says and then you memorize what is said and then you reiterate it on a test or in answers to questions. And that's why within Sufism there is a sheikh. There is a teacher who is an exemplar of what it is he's talking about. And if he's not an exemplar of what it is he's talking about, he's not really a teacher. A teacher, to be a true teacher, has to be what he says, not just someone who talks. Sufism is known as the path of love. But all of us have different experiences with love and with love in our lives. Not all parents know what love is. And if they don't know what love is, they can't teach their children what love is. The first teachers the children have are their parents. And if their parents are harsh, children learn harshness. If their parents don't pay attention to them, children don't understand kindness. If their parents are so in touch with themselves that they have no time for their own children, their children don't grow up with proper guidance. Now, you can tell your kids that they have to go to school, and you can tell your children that they have to study hard, and you can beat them and make sure they get good grades, but they won't become true human beings. They'll become people who are disciplined in certain ways and are able to accomplish certain things, but their hearts haven't been touched. Their hearts haven't been opened. The part of them that is attached to the qualities of Allah is never awoken. And without that being awoken, you walk through this illusory world in a state of robotic reaction to the stimuli that surrounds you. And that can often be very harsh because it's animalistic. Animals do what they need for survival. Man, in his true form, is able to take a step beyond that, a step above that, is able to resonate at a different level than just survival. But for that to happen, there has to be interaction with the resonance of Allah through someone in whom that resonance vibrates. So, if the teacher is a true teacher, he resonates kindness. And he gives the ones who come before him the security of that kindness and establishes in them a belief system wherein they learn to rely on that kindness. Now, why do people come back to the teacher? Why do they sit in front of him even if he isn't doing anything? Why is there a occurrence when nothing seems to be happening? And it's because there is a communication that is beyond words. There is a communication that just comes from the resonance of the being that you're with. If you're with a lion, the lion gives off a certain resonance. A bull gives off a certain resonance. A hippopotamus gives off a certain resonance. And people give off certain resonances. Now, many people are animals in the form of humans, and they will give off the resonance of the animals that they are. So we have to find someone who gives off the resonance of a human being, what a true human being is. And it's only through that connection, it's only through having that in our life that we can become like that. One of the important characteristics of a sheikh is that he is able to give to his students that which he has. Now, if he's a true sheikh, that means he has love. And he's able to give love to his students. And the students pick that up, and it becomes part of them. The student is supposed to become like the teacher. If the student can't become like the teacher, then the student is resisting the teacher. And the reason a student resists, or anybody resists, is there's no trust. You don't believe in the consistency of the person in front of you, and you don't believe in their consistent kindness. You think all of a sudden it's going to revert to what I used to know, which is a non-empathetic situation where I am not considered in whatever the situation is. But if you're with a teacher who is consistent in their attitude towards you, in their attitude towards everyone, is consistent in their kindness, is consistent in their love, then slowly we begin to lose our resistance and we begin to surrender. And it's in surrender that we find the qualities that are real. But how do we get to the point of surrender? How do we get to the point where our resistance begins to break down? And not because it's being forced to break down, but because it seems normal for it to break down in the presence of this overwhelming consistency of love and kindness. Kindness is like a salve that heals wounds. And when people come to a teacher, they usually come damaged. And there has to be a time of repair. Muhammad Rahim Bawa Muhaiyaddeen, my teacher, said, "Some of my children come to me so damaged that all I can do is hold them next to my breast. I can't do anything else for them for a long time, but I can hold them." And that's because these young people or adult people weren't ever held. They never had that closeness and that intimacy with a parent. They never had a parent who cared for them enough that everything else became secondary to that child. That kind of love influences the entire growth pattern of a being. And somewhere in our life, we have to encounter that kind of love. And that is what changes. And it changes us internally. It gives us the bravery to depend on the consistency of the person we're interacting with. Otherwise, we don't have that bravery. And it takes great bravery to surrender to someone, because what happens when you surrender is you become vulnerable. Now, what's interesting is that you can't find God's qualities unless you become vulnerable to God. But if you're afraid to be vulnerable, you're never going to let go. If you never let go, you're never going to surrender. So, vulnerability is an act of bravery. Vulnerability is an act of courage. And unless we develop the courage to become vulnerable, we're never going to break through the arrogance of invulnerability, the arrogance of harshness towards whatever comes at us, and our ability to confront it and defeat it. Things are going to go in the wrong direction for us. Things are going to go in the direction of becoming hard. The heart can either be melted or it can become a rock. And if we are constantly in the midst of confrontation and in the midst of self-defense, it becomes a rock. And it becomes very hard to break through this rock. It is only through love and through kindness that this rock can be melted. There's a certain kind of heat in love that melts you, and it melts you in an appropriate way. It takes away fear. It takes away resentment. It takes away jealousy. It takes away shame. It takes away all of the qualities that keep you from surrendering. People have interesting reactions to different things. If somebody has more than they have and they think they should have it, there's resentment. There's jealousy. There's all kinds of shields that are built up against situations in order to make ourselves feel better. But in reality, everything is fine. In reality, perfection exists. The problem is, we are so steeped in the world of illusion and so steeped in the arrogance of the ego and so steeped in the world of I, me, mine that we cannot see the perfection in the unity of all of creation. And to get to that point where we can see the perfection in the unity of all of creation, we have to do some major work on our attitudes and on the way we perceive things. We have to see a different world than we used to see. We have to see in a different way. When people have positive circumstances in their lives, we have to learn how to be happy for those positive circumstances in others. As we can break down the egocentric point of view that we have, then we are capable of sharing in everyone's joy. And can you imagine if all of the joy in the world is being shared with you, by you? You're different. There's always a place where there's joy in the world. And if we can find that place, we can be in that place. And that's the focus of a true teacher. And that's why when you're with a true teacher, you don't need to be anywhere else. The entire world is right there. All experience is right there. All joy is right there, because you are connected to the essence of things, because you are connected to Him, and He's connected to the essence of things. And you become aware of that somehow, and you allow yourself to surrender to that. And it creates a place of peace, a place of contentment, a place of ease. So when you're with somebody who is not at ease, either your own qualities are strong enough to put him at ease, or you become ill at ease. And that's what happens. And that's why you have to be very careful who your friends are. You can't associate with people on a consistent basis who are not peaceful and expect to be peaceful. It is going to ruin your peace unless your peace is so great that you can transform them. And if it's not, you're going to take on their qualities. So as we travel through this world, we have to be very careful. We have to protect ourselves. And then we also have to find out where we can surrender. The protecting ourselves has to stop, and the surrendering has to begin. And we have to find the place that we can surrender. And when we find that place, we have to hold on to that place. We have to know it. The mind can't tell the difference between the past, the present, and the future. The mind just goes on thinking. And if it's thinking about something that will happen, it feels that at this moment. So if you project negative thoughts into the future, you're going to feel those negative thoughts now. And that's one of the definitions of worrying. Feeling future pain now. I mean, come on. This is a hobby of a lot of people. They project in the future, they project that it isn't going to be good, and then they worry about it, and they fret about it, and they feel it all now. What you should be able to do is find your moments of peace from the recesses of your memory. Find the moments that brought you into a place of repose, a place where you were in the midst of the heavenly gardens, where everything was fine and you were content. If you can bring that memory into the present, it will become your present. And that's why we continue to go and sit before the feet of the Sheikh, because in that presence, in that moment, peace exists. And if we've learned to surrender to that, then peace overwhelms us. But if our ego is so strong that we have to believe everything comes from us and from within us, we're never going to find that place. Because that place isn't from us. That place is from our Creator. That place is from Allah. That place is from the unity of existence. And in that unity of existence, all people exist. We have to be free enough that we can accept that other people can also be peaceful, that other people can also be full of joy, that other people can also love, that this isn't a gift that's just given to us. This is a universal gift. And all men share in that universal gift if they have the capacity to surrender to that gift. And the only ones who don't share in it are the ones who close themselves off from it because of their incredibly harsh, egocentric nature and their incredibly self-defensive mode against this world. I've had people come up to me and ask questions that indicate who they are. Questions like, in business, don't you have to be aggressive and conniving in order to make things work because everybody else is aggressive and conniving? Well, when you set that kind of a premise for what's going on, you have created that kind of a situation. And you're going to attract to yourself aggressive and conniving people. You're not going to allow the normal flow of things to occur, and you're going to keep yourself separate from Allah's constant mercy and compassion. So if we can begin to understand what it's like to be kind, because we've had kindness given to us, we should think about those moments when we found that kindness, and then we have to try and give that kindness to someone else. It could be to your parents, to your mother and father, even though they may not have given you kindness. You have the opportunity to be kind to them if you learn what kindness and love are. If you don't, then you can only do the best facsimile of that you're capable of, which usually means gifts and money. It doesn't mean yourself. And the biggest gift you can give anybody is yourself. The truth of who you are and the connection to what you are connected to. If you've made that true connection with reality, through the Sheikh, to Allah, through the prophets, through all of the friends of Allah, if you've made that connection, then you are a walking reminder to people of the truth. When you enter into a room, that resonance comes into the room with you. And if you are fearless, you can create a sense of fearlessness in the ones you encounter. But fearless of what? Fearless of what the world can do to us because of our faith in the protection from our Creator. This doesn't happen in a day or a week or a month, but it does happen. And it happens at God's speed. And we have to have the patience to wait for it to happen. But while we're waiting, we can practice being kind. For some people, that might mean having a dog and feeding him daily and taking him for walks, because that's the best they can do. For some people, it might be being part of a community and doing work for the community. There's lots and lots of ways to express love. Marriage, of course, is one of the cores of that teaching. And in that teaching, the kindness that we can do to each other in a marriage is constantly at the forefront. The language we use towards each other, the words that we express the way we feel to each other, the names that we give each other, all indicate the kind of feelings that we have pouring out of us. Can we stay in a state of love? Can we constantly block out from us all of the negativity that the world is constantly pouring out at us? If you watch television, you'll find, at least in the political realm, that one side is negative towards the other and the other side is negative towards the side that's negative to them. And what happens for the most part is there's a constant negative diatribe about what they don't agree with. And that negative diatribe can affect you. I've seen people in restaurants start screaming at the top of their lungs about politics, to the point where their wives had to grab them and pull them down. It's not rational, and it's not sane. It's emotional. And we have to understand that we have an emotional center. And this emotional center is put into action by things that we have very strong attachments to. and we pick our attachments. Our attachments come to us by way of our social circles, by way of our belief systems, whatever way. But when somebody attacks one of our attachments, we begin to attack back. So the question is, how do we get rid of our attachments? And how do we stop giving them such importance? And are we capable of following our actions to the point when we see emotional reactions happen? Can we understand when we've lost control and the emotions in us have taken over and we no longer are rational? There's the story of people riding in a carriage, and the driver stops for lunch, and with his lunch he has a half a bottle of vodka. So when he gets back on the carriage, he loses control of the horses, and the horses take you wherever they want. Well, you're sitting in the carriage, but you have no control over where you're going. And that's what emotions do. When emotions begin to carry you, you no longer have control over what you're doing. And it's because you've lost your rationality. You've lost that part of you which measures restraint and which brings restraint into your being. Now, different people have different monitors on their rationality. Some people have almost no monitor, and every situation that becomes difficult for them is a full tilt situation. In other words, they go to war at the slightest provocation. We can't go to war at the slightest provocation, because otherwise we will be in a constant state of war. And you know what war does to you? It eventually kills you, because wars just end up in destruction. We have to be able to avoid war. We have to be able to monitor our emotional responses so that we understand the nature of them, we understand why they're happening, and we can have a handle on them. It's only then that we can begin to become rational, and after becoming rational, become kind and become loving. But as long as we allow ourselves to go into fits, people won't trust our consistency. People won't trust the fact that you or I are a safe person to be with. And for people to be surrendered to us, they have to feel safe with us, just in the same way as if we're going to surrender to somebody else, we have to feel safe with them. So the Sheikh has transcended all of this, and he no longer feels threatened by people, because he knows that the only real power in creation is Allah, and the only thing that he is in awe of, the only thing that he is subservient to, is Allah. So fear leaves him, because the world can't do anything to him, because he knows he is under Allah's protection. We need to get to that place where we are at peace and we are surrendered to Allah. And what does surrender to Allah mean? It means surrendered to the qualities that are Allah. So we're surrendered to mercy. We're surrendered to kindness. To spread the truth and for the truth to stick, it has to be spread through kindness and love. It can't be spread through the sword. The sword brings about resentment and fear, and anything that is induced into people by resentment and fear is not going to be positive. It's certainly not going to be the true nature of religion. So we need to be the ones who understand truth, who understand kindness, who understand the way of compassion. And we have to understand it through having gotten it and then being able to give it out. You can't give somebody else something you never had. You can't give unto others what you don't have. So even if you're willing to give them whatever you have, you may have a limited resource. So we need to increase our resource. And the way to do that is to tap in to the cornucopia of all resources, which is our Lord, and to tap in to his never-ending ability to give. If we can tap into that, then we're no longer doing the giving. We're limited. He's not. Our giving is limited. His isn't. If we give from him, we're not limited anymore. And if we get to the point where we are not limited, then we can become an aid in this world and help others. It's something to think about, and it's something that's possible. We can become part of his constant giving. We can be an aid for our Lord. And we should strive to become that. We do it through understanding the nature of reality. And we see the nature of reality by understanding the nature of our Sheikh and the nature of the people in this world who give. And as we watch them, we can become like them. May we become like our Sheikh, and may he take us to the straight path and to the truth. Ameen. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.